Hey everybody, it's your friendly neighborhood game master Zach Hall here, back with a quick follow-up from the first dev diary for my Stargate hack of Modiphius's 2D20 system. If you haven't seen the first video, go and check that out. The link to it in the doobie-doo or should be a part of the same playlist as this video. It kind of gives some of my reasoning and some of the basics of why I'm doing it, why I picked the 2D20 system, why I think it makes sense, and I kind of go over some basic stuff. How does the system work when it comes to its dice mechanics at its most base level? Kind of go over a mission statement that I actually have an update for, and then the two main important customizations that a game developer can make in the 2D20 system when using their SRD, and that is the attributes and skill list that the developer decides to use. So we kind of went over that and haven't been able to stop thinking about it. I've got two things to share in this video. One is an update to stuff that I wrote and went over in Dev Diary number 1, and then the second is something new that I haven't shared. That is the character creation. In the first video, I mentioned that the next thing I wanted to tackle was taking a look at the species and kind of start developing out the Lifepath system, because that's what I was familiar with from Star Trek Adventures. Star Trek Adventures is the 2D20 based game that I'm familiar with. It uses this very cool life path system, and I guess I won't bury the lead. That life path system does not exist in the SRD, and instead the SRD has a different character creation process that is really, really simple, if a little less guided. So I want to share what I think the Stargate hack version of that quick character creation process would be, and it was good just to get pen on paper, words down, and kind of describe the entire situation, even if some of the supporting material isn't complete yet. And also potentially get feedback on if people would be interested and if I should spend some time developing a life path style character creation path that is way more guided, would take more time, but is less customizable, I would say. So that's going to be the second part of this video. First, let's just jump into updates of what I shared in the first video, which is kind of the core stuff. So as you can see, I've updated the vision statement a little bit and formatting. I figured out it's been a while since I've used this markdown text editor, so it took me a second to remember how to style certain things. So I got tables and stuff that look way cleaner. But I've updated my vision statement. In the first video, I listed a couple of alternative keywords. I included cinematic and heroic as alternate keywords to describe the game. And I've decided, instead of just kind of listing them as alts, to just incorporate them into a broad vision statement that I can change in the future if I feel the need to, but just starting with the most, and if I get down the line and it no longer matches the vision, I can just change it. So right now, the vision statement for this Stargate hack of 2D20 is a Stargate game tells a cinematic science fiction story of highly competent heroic explorers voluntarily facing the unknown. So the keywords here that I would call out that a future player, me describing it to one of my friends to play with, the main ones I would focus on: cinematic, highly competent, heroic, and voluntarily. These are all kind of things that I think are both key to Stargate, the universe, the story in general, but that I want to replicate in the game. Keywords you won't find in this vision statement and might tell you that this game might not be for you is that tactical is not listed here among the keywords. Realistic or simulation, simulated, those are not keywords in this game. I think I said in the first video, I don't anticipate this game being played on gridded combat. I don't anticipate there being these incredibly complex, involved combat sequences. I while tactical is kind of one of those ones because it means a lot of different things to different people. But I would essentially say that when I think of tactical, I think of something like Pathfinder 2nd Edition, lesser extent D&D 5th Edition. But Pathfinder 2nd Edition is a game where the game is extremely, extremely difficult. The monsters will kill you if you and the rest in the party are not on the same page, and expressing a lot of system mastery in your combat choices and are working together to create these huge advantages and numerical advantages for you and the party. Otherwise, you might just be dead. That's not the type of game I anticipate this Stargate game telling. Moving on to the next update. I don't remember if I had this in the first video. I'm contemplating using a variant rule around focus scores or focuses. If you're familiar with the 2D20 system, that focuses are specific areas that kind of like zoom in on a skill that if you're performing a task that your focus would apply to, instead of only being able to roll a 1 to get a critical success, the range of numbers increases based on your score. By default, the range increases to the number of the associated skill, which is often going to be 4 or 5. And the way that character progression works in 2D20 is a lot more granular. It takes a lot for your attribute scores to go up. So, or your skill scores, your skill scores to go up. So I really like the idea of, instead of relying on the skill score, to have actually like the focus itself having a score somewhere between 2 and 5, and based on the score of your focus, that tells you how much your critical success range increases. Still an option in the next section of the video when I kind of go over the character creation list. I've got both versions of that step in the character creation, whether you're using variant or not. I think if I was running this, I would probably run it with the variant first, just to see how impactful that decision was. So my attributes, if you watched the first video, I really wasn't confident in the attributes list. I continued reading the SRD document on 2D20, and farther along in the section, they provide some alternate lists. And one of the lists, that the second column of this table right here, the SRD actually provides, and they call out that it is for highly competent, highly skilled PCs in a game. That if you're kind of similar to exactly what I want the Stargate game to be, and is a lot closer to the Star Trek Adventures flavor of the 2D20 system. So on the left, you can see the generic 2D20 list that I was kind of working with in the first video and was trying to change kind of on the fly. Like, I did not like agility and coordination. So I'm using the alternate list. I believe this alternate list is exactly, if not maybe there's one difference between this and the Star Trek Adventures list. The reason why I wasn't just using the Star Trek list because it wasn't in the SRD and I wasn't sure what I was legally, like, am I allowed to use it? But the fact that this was available in the SRD with like the Star Trek serial numbers filed off is perfect. So going to be using this second column for my attributes: control, daring, fitness, insight, presence, and reason. I think this works really, really well. Skills, on the other hand, I am torn. I really am. Part of me thinks that I should stick to the same amount of skills that Star Trek Adventures has. So 6 attributes, 6 skills. And the skills are really generic and high level, but then really leaning into focuses to kind of make up for all the different kind of specialities that can be in a Stargate game. But the more I thought about it, the more focuses aren't a like replacement for a skill. But like, they make it easier to roll a critical hit, but you're not increasing your chances necessarily just generally succeeding. Like the range where you succeed at cost or nothing happens is remaining pretty large if you are using the same skill. Or just the game might just feel a little more boring, a little more settled, I guess. Like there's less change, less variability. If every scientist, historian, if every smart person on a Stargate team has a 5 or has like I think it would be like a 5 in know, even though what they know is pretty different, and then kind of relying on focuses and focus ratings to differentiate the characters. I feel like that's just 1-2 step too far removed. So created a draft of an expanded skill list. If you look, I split fight into melee and ranged. I could easily be convinced that isn't necessary and just make it fight. Move is still move. I don't feel like the game necessarily needs anything beyond that. Stealth would probably come under move if it's just trying to lay low while moving through a Goa'uld ship. Like, just make that part of move. Everything is fine. I don't feel like you need an entirely new skill for it. But then I did go and split know into 3 large categories: history, science, and technology. I couldn't think of a way to combine further than this. Like, if I'm gonna split know, these are the 3 kind of splits that make the most sense. I couldn't come up with a term that would cover both science and history in a thoughtful, useful way. I don't necessarily know if science and technology should go together. Maybe it should. Again, all this is kind of up in there. I'm not totally convinced. I think I'm gonna have to play test. That's really kind of what I'm getting down to, is like there's too many options available. And I do think I'm just going to have to run some like play tests with volunteers and find some people who are willing to do it. Talk, I split into command and deceive. All the others here were kind of in the SRD as suggestions. Like, if you want to go into like a big skill list, here's some options. History, science, technology were listed among like what you could split know into. Command was not on there. But they had coerce on there, but I don't like that. I don't know. I imagine that there needs to be a skill for a commanding officer trying to like give a command, and coerce is just, that's not appropriate for that. And I think command, I think if you just describe it as both kind of giving orders to those expected to follow them and forcefully making a request, I could see command being used to intimidate, being used just like persuade. I just didn't really like the connotation that coerce gave me. But as like all these are splitting up, I liked renaming talk into command, but I don't know if deceive would get a lot of play, but I think there's enough social situations in Stargate that I think it might be useful. Survive is still survive. And then operate, I would say technology is actually a split from operate. Pilot and technology are actually kind of a split from operate by the SRD rules, with know being a split, like history and science being kind of descended from know. I wouldn't have do it that way, but I do think that kind of makes sense. But then there's there might be some overlap between pilot and technology. I haven't quite figured out yet. Like, should pilot be its own skill, or should piloting be a focus of the technology skill list? Because gotta use technology, either alien or human, to fly. And I wonder, like, you could easily go, I could easily see someone telling a campaign that if like they didn't really want to mess with starships that much, like classic early Stargate SG-1, could easily see there not really being a need for pilot. That skill could just totally go away. So I wonder if maybe I work on these some more, and maybe I'd add, if we're operating under the assumption that this is just for me, that I'm not creating a publicly available version of this game, then I will, even as I'm talking, I might scratch pilot, make that a focus that's under technology, and I might combine melee and ranged back into fight, or maybe I make that something like combat, because then that might involve like that would be for attack rolls, but then it could also be used for like the knowledge of combat. I could see allowing someone to roll just combat and insight or combat and reason in order to create like some kind of tactical combat. So I think I just convinced myself that I might be able to bump this from 10 to 8 by scratching pilot and recombining melee and ranged into back into fight, but rename it combat. So I'm just gonna go 8 skill list, and we're gonna call it, I hate just move, it sounds to me, all of the 6 skill list skills sound silly. Just move by itself also sounds silly. So if I can rename fight to combat, I can rename move to movement and maybe come up with something else later. We've got history, we've got science. I'm gonna put command next, going in the list of like the what's kind of coming from what. There are all these different verb tenses, and I'm not gonna be able to just let these be. I don't know. This is probably the one that could get played around with the most. I could spend a lot of time just noodling and theory crafting around this, but I think at the end of the day, gonna have to play test, get other people's eyeballs on it, see what feels good, what makes sense. But all right. So that's kind of updates to what was in video 1, updated a couple different lists of skills, just a new, not using this anymore, using this alternate list of attributes, updated vision statement. All right, let's switch to the character creation rules. So these are straight out of the 2D20 SRD with some changes in order to boost the overall power level of PCs at the end of character creation. I really like I said, this is a game with highly capable explorers. The power level coming out of character creation should be pretty high. So if I've done my math right, this is characters are still probably going to be a little less powered in terms of like total attribute points, total skill points are going to be a little underpowered compared to a Star Trek Adventures character, but only by like 1 or 2. I'm not going to call out every change, because if you're not reading along or like care necessarily what the 2D20 SRD says, then like who really gives a rip? But if you played Star Trek Adventures, they have values. In the SRD, they only have truths. And I looked around the SRD, it doesn't look like values was anywhere. So that seems like a Star Trek Adventures specific flavor. So I'm gonna go with what's in the SRD. Again, just to like, I don't want to be putting in a ton of work here just to have to do a lot of more work to undo certain things if I ever wanted to publish this, even for free as a PDF on like Drive-Thru RPG. So if I have to go through something like Modiphius's World Builders clearance before I can put it up, I don't want to get in legal trouble by adding something that's Star Trek Adventures only and not present in the SRD. So we're just going to go with the SRD. It's a good reason also why for me to like not spend a ton of time creating species, like attributes and stuff that are Stargate IP. This might be, without that, I might be able to create a good bit of like a hack packet PDF for this, scratch the serial number off the Stargate name, but do enough to kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Stargate, Amazon doesn't own the copyright on the mere idea of moving through like from point A to point B via wormholes. So, well, I say that, I am not a lawyer. I'm surely not, but who knows? So define truths. A truth is a word or short phrase that sums up what the character is about. The first truth should be the character's most definitive, most essential nature, boiled down to its most straightforward form. I imagine this first truth is going to be like basically a descriptor of the character's role on the team and their species. This, and like they get a trait. I don't actually think I talk a lot about traits in this because their traits are in the core rules for 2D20. In multiple plays of Star Trek Adventures, almost no GM I've seen in either an actual play I've watched pros do or playing in Star Trek Adventures, traits has always been kind of hand woven and just become part of like the fiction that the GM is spelling without it becoming like this thing. In the core rules, traits is actually really similar to traits in Fate if you ever played Fate Core or Fate Accelerated. So if there are these like short definitions that allow players to be able to kind of like help. I don't know, like it's, and that's why I think I've seen it like people struggle to kind of lean into them so much in my warranted small exposure. Is, to me, it just feels like describing the scene, writing down a couple traits. Raining and it's nighttime, a urban back alley. Writing those down just seems, unless you're playing with a play group that really ready to lean into traits and has some prep ahead of time on how they work, can easily fade those back. So they're not actually here in the character creation, but a character would get a trait for like their species that might unlock specific talents, which we'll read about later. Additional traits reflect a quirk, flaw, personal struggle, impulse, habit, drive, personality trait, backstory, personal agenda, etc. Reflect something that could cause problems in the character's life. These truths can be invoked to grant the player fortune. Fortune is a game mechanic that I'm actually not incredibly super familiar with yet. Now I know fortune, you start with 5 fortune at the beginning of character creation and can spend 1 to basically give yourself more stuff during character creation. Like, can literally boost one of your attributes by paying with a fortune. But I'm not actually certain yet what fortune's used for, like session to session. Because if you have extra fortune, you get to start every mission or adventure or episode with that amount of fortune. And I don't know if that's just momentum or automatic successes. I'm not entirely sure. But so we've got define truths as step 1. I think that starting with defining truths helps you create a bit of a picture of who your character is as a person. You then go into select character attributes. I'm going with a point by system here. The SRD describes an array for both attributes and skills, or point by. I opted for point by because of the character is a customization options. And the array was still like, some of them were still kind of high. Like the lowest score was an 8, but the max was a 10. I want characters to have way more variability. I wanted Daniel Jackson to go out there with a 6 in fitness compared to a 11 or 12 in history. Like I want characters who are really good at something to be really good. And I want characters, because they're really good at something, I want them to be bad, at least bad, if not average at 1. Like those to me are the best characters. High highs, lows lows. Not like, I don't want like well-rounded, just slightly above average characters. For me, feel free to do you. You start each attribute of 6, then just divide 15 points between the 6 attributes. And on scaling points junk, you have 15 points, increase 1, you just take 1 from your pool of available, blah blah blah. Only 1 attribute can be increased to 10 or more during this step, and the maximum an attribute can be increased during any step of character creation is 12. Because in the next kind of mini step, after you've assigned attributes, the player may spend 1 fortune to increase 1 attribute by 2 and another attribute by 1. So the way this math works is this kind of makes sure that you're only going to have 1 attribute at 12, because you can only have, before spending a fortune, you can only have 1 at 10. So the highest you can have is you have 1 score at 12 and 1 at 11. And if you do that, you're walking out with a 6 on something. Perfectly fine. Love that. Ideal for me, actually. You're going to select the character's skills. Start with each skill at 0, then divide 15 points between the available. Instead of naming a number, let me just future-proof myself. Start with each skill at 0, then divide 15 points between the available skills. Only 1 skill may be increased to 4 or above during this step of character creation. Then after assigning skills, the player may spend 1 fortune to increase 2 skills by each. Even with 8 skills, I don't think many people are, maybe you're walking out with 2 skills out of 5 if you really, really want to. But I think 15 is, I believe I increased this from the SRD number. Pretty sure. I say it out loud. It's 15 between 6 attributes and 6 skills in the SRD. The only difference is, like, obviously with attributes, I start at 6. At skills, I start at 0. The range is much smaller. And in my game now, they're splitting between 8 skills at minimum, I think, to instead of 6. I don't think the 6 really fit what my vision. So then it's time to focuses. So I got 2 options. So if you're not using focus ratings, player selects 5 focuses. They can be chosen freely. Then after selecting focuses, if you want more, you can spend 1 fortune to get 2 additional focuses. So if you're not using ratings for focuses, you can have 5 or 7 freely picked. Get on Wikipedia or Stargate fandom wiki and just find some keywords or some technobabble stuff. What are some areas that you want your character to kind of like specialize in past the skills? So inside of combat, hand-to-hand combat, that would be a focus. So if you're in combat and you're fighting with a dagger or with fists, that would fall under your hand-to-hand combat focus. So your ability to roll a critical hit gets higher. So if you are using focus ratings, this is not in the SRD at all. They provide focus ratings as an option, like a variant rule for focuses, but they don't provide like how to set that up in character creation. So I did my best kind of off the top of my head. It feels right, sounds right. I think like the language math, if that makes sense. If you're using character focuses, the player selects 4 focuses. These can be chosen freely. Each rating begins at a rating of 2. I think that's right. If I started up this video and like maybe I could have like done a little bit more. No, in the focus ratings variant, each of a character's focuses is accompanied by a rating from 2 to 5. Everybody scores a critical success on a 1, so a focus rating of 1 would be irrelevant. So if your focus is a 2, it means you can roll a 1 or a 2 and get a critical success, which is the same thing as getting using a focus, because a 1 is a crit regardless of whether you're using a focus or not. So that tracks. But because we're using ratings and there's a lot of opportunity here. Well, I don't know, you let me know. To me, when I was initially fleshing this out, using ratings to really like grow, potentially get a critical success like range all the way to 4, like having a 20% chance of rolling a critical success, pretty huge. It seemed pretty powerful, so I reduced from 5 focuses to 4. All those 4 focuses start at 2. You then have 2 points to increase the rating of your chosen focuses. They can be spent in any way. But intention being, you can increase 2 focuses by 1, making them a rating of 3, or you could put both into the same rating and making it a focus rating of 4, and the rest are all at a 2. And if you wanted to do more than that, you could spend a fortune to get 2 more focuses that start at rating 2 and gain 1 more point to increase the rating. And the maximum rating of a focus during character creation is 4. But now that I think about it, like, I wonder if this is actually a bit of a nerf on focuses, because probably in an ideal situation, if you were smart and really optimizing, you would pick multiple focuses that might come up that are directly tied to your skill. And your skill, like your high skill, one of them should at least be at a 5. So So focuses are not tied to any specific skill and can be applied to any skill test a character attempts, as long as the focus would logically benefit the skill test being attempted. So maybe it's not that big of a deal, because I was initially like defaulting to the focus always being tied to the high skill, and if the player knows what they're doing, they would always try that. But maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe I should just make it the same amount of focuses as not using focus ratings. Curiouser and curiouser. Should I do 4 focuses but increase the amount of points? But the max is always going to be a 4. I do think this ruling needs to get pulled away out of like a sub rule of spending fortune, because if you didn't spend fortune, you might not see that if like you glossed over it. And I specifically said during character creation, not during this step of character creation. So this would apply also to this mini step 3 of spending fortune. I don't know. I might come back. Might increase the number of focuses, might increase the number of points to get. 2 all of a sudden seems low, but could be wrong. That's focuses. Then talents. Talents are, you get one talent unique to the character's species, 3 additional talents chosen freely, even though talents would have their own restrictions or prereq. There's a great list of basically like what default or like basic talents you should have in the SRD. Basically just going to use those as a guide or like a starting point, and then take a look at Star Trek Adventures to see if there's any that I can take the Star Trek IP off of and would still apply to Stargate, and maybe even rename them specific to Stargate or something else. I don't know. I have to thread this really fine line of not being obviously Stargate, but not using any Stargate IP because I just refuse to get sued by Amazon. And maybe I am overcooking how much of a potential that is. I would like that potential to be 0 while still doing this. So as close to 0 as possible. Talents, blah, blah, blah. So then you have derived values. And this is basically just, I think in Star Trek Adventures, they call this finishing touches. This would be where you would picking a name, picking a rank if you are a member of Stargate or part of the Air Force, maybe picking a role on the team. That would probably be maybe some session 0 stuff with your GM and the rest of the party. And then, but you do have your maximum stress is equal to your fitness attribute plus your survival skill. I really like using the survival skill for stress because I think it immediately gets some. What's the phrase I'm trying to? It gives a reason for survival to exist. Since Stargate is usually not like it's not a survival show. Stranded fairly often, of course, but they were never really at that high of a risk of dying, and putting it to a dice roll is not something I would ever do as a GM. So survival kind of made me kind of question, should it be on the list? Is it on the list? Yeah, survive. But you get your stress, which is kind of like HP, but not HP. It's one step removed, so less feels like a physical only thing. Stress could apply in a lot of different ways, but it's all one track. And then bonus damage to attacks based on skills. This should just be updated to, you add CD should stand for combat die, I believe, equal to their combat score, so the relevant to their weapon attacks, and a combat die equal to their command score to any mental attacks. Mental attacks is going to be interesting. I don't really know what that I've got to dive into like their social ruling a little bit more to see like, does anything like mental attacks to me screams like supernatural magical something, but it's weird that it would default to that in a settingless SRD. So it's just interesting. I've got to dive in to see if like they would consider something like command against an unwilling creature. Like, does that become, or like, how would a mundane creature provide mental attacks? Or maybe they're just doing this to like cover their bases, and this probably wouldn't come up at all unless I created a species with a special trait or a special talent that someone could opt in to take that allowed them to, like, if they were psionics, if they were telepathic in some ways and could use their minds literally to attack someone. But that doesn't seem super Stargate-y, at least as a PC. Could definitely see this for enemies and PCs. Yep. So that's it. 7 large steps. Simple. A lot of this is just copy and pasted out of the SRD and reformat it a little bit to kind of fit. And I just kind of had to spend some time like thinking about types of like kind of characters I wanted to make. That was the helpful part of the vision statement. Well, I said I want these to be highly competent explorer heroes. They should have a good amount of, like, they should have high attributes and high skills and et cetera, et cetera. Benefit of making a vision statement. So I am cranking more stuff out for this and really enjoying it. I think next steps is talents, taking a look at talents and at least creating a super simple list or spreadsheet of what's available, what makes sense. I don't want to spend a ton of time on it just because I might get into sticky IP stuff with like species specific stuff. But then after that, I think I've got to take a look at things like equipment, armor, weapons. I don't know really what's available in the SRD. If I can literally just copy and paste if they've already got like mundane modern military weapons, if I can just bloop, bloop, move over, copy and paste, or if I need to do some work to figure that out. So that's that part I got to do some research on and potentially like mess around with. Luckily, all like that stuff from a like Stargate IP wise is pretty easy to set up. Now, like once we get into some alien stuff, but I feel like I can just rename it, call things by their nicknames like Zapper instead of their large, like long alien proper name. Might just be a little easier that way. So. All right. If you stuck to the end of this, seems like you're interested in my Stargate 2D20 game. Thanks. Really appreciate it. Leave a comment. Tell me what you're looking forward to, what kind of thing you would like to see in the game, especially if you are already familiar a little bit with 2D20 and kind of what it involves, what it entails. Let me know. If you're not familiar with 2D20 but are still interested in this and would like me to do like a bigger how does 2D20 function and work and explain all the different rules, let me know, because I'd also love to record that. It might be super useful. Thanks for being here. I'm doing this for me, and talking into a microphone helps me think. And while I'm here, I might as well hit record and might as well run it through my editor. So thanks so much. Really appreciate you. I expect another dev diary in the next couple days if I keep my momentum going and my interest. So thanks. Go ahead and computer, close the iris.